July 25th, 2025. This live stream is a cybersecurity live stream, and today we'll be going through a few topics. Those topics specifically was a massive data breach within a social media, new form of social media, and additionally, drones over the southern border of the United States. The a recap on the give me one moment, guys. On the Microsoft SharePoint leak that was actually determined to connect to some nuclear systems. There it is. That's it. I just figured out why my video was going dark. Sorry, guys. Great. So is because the database was public facing, had no sort of security, was open. And I've read online that that might have been due to vibe coding. I think that's completely assumed. But what seems to be consistent with this breach is that the data was never protected, or at the point of breach was not protected. The layer of the database layer was public facing. So let's go here. AP News speaking about this. Quote, T said that about 72,000 images were leaked online, including 13,000 images of selfies or selfies featuring a photo identification that users submitted during account verification. So, government IDs, no email addresses, no phone numbers. Breach only affects users who signed up before February 2024. That's a huge point. That probably means this was a legacy database. That would be my guess, is that they upgraded their database somewhere around February 2024. And after that, any users who signed up after that may have been stored somewhere else. I'm not sure. Working around the clock to secure its systems. No evidence to suggest additional user data was affected. One thing that's very sinister about this is that there are maps being posted online, location-based maps. So these photos had GPS data attached to them, and that GPS data was exposed to the breach. And there are marker maps. I haven't actually dug into this map. Maybe as we continue reading, we will find something about it. It seemed like a very, very foolish, it seemed like this was not something that should have happened. This wasn't a sophisticated attack. It seemed as though this was just exposed database. And that's another reason, if these were all from before February 2024, maybe they weren't using AI at that point. But this was okay, so here we go. Quote, this is a description of T from Scripps News. Quote, T presents itself as a safe way for women to anonymously vet men they might connect with on dating apps such as Tinder or Bumble, ensuring that your date is a, quote, safe, not a catfish, and not in a relationship, unquote. T is a must-have, helping women avoid red flags before the first date with dating advice. And this was a highly controversial app. It's a social rating app. And for this reason, it was, I would assume, targeted. I shouldn't assume, but an app like this cannot, it's a huge deal. It's not as though it's a female only app. I posted this article online, and one of the commenters said, quote, a founder building a safety platform for the dating space, this infuriates me, but sadly it's not surprising. There's zero excuse for shipping sloppy code or skipping basic security practices. It's true. And this goes on it's true. This is fairly malicious. It seems like a huge breach of privacy. And you hope that everything works itself out. So this is from AOL.com. past users held in a legacy database. This is what AOL.com says. Rendered thousands of user images held in a legacy database. Very unfortunate. That's very unfortunate. You have to go through your cloud and remove things. You have to go through it, whether it's AWS, Google Cloud, Azure, whatever else you may use. You got to go through there and purge everything you don't need and make sure that everything that you do have in there is secure. It's not public facing, and if it is public facing, it has the appropriate protocols to defend malicious attacks. So this is this is a huge deal, and this is an example of why you want to go back and clean up these types of things. You have to go, if you're in cloud, if you work within the cloud, you don't want an overwhelming amount of clutter. And if you've worked within the cloud, you know that can happen easily. There are many ways that can happen through many different parts of the cloud. AWS with roles, with APIs, with functions. I mean, and AWS has so many things. Those are just the basics. You can go through anything. And if you're not cleaning up the stuff you don't need, this is what happens. Legacy database. And, whatever the proper protocol would have been for them, I'm not sure. We can ask ChatGPT. What is the proper protocol when I believe you just transfer the data. Make a migration. Evaluate the legacy database, understand the schema, assess data quality. So this is getting into deep. I just want to talk about migration strategies, transformations, and migrations. So here are the migration strategies. 1, big bang migration. All data is migrated at once. Simple systems, pros, quick and simple, cons, risky, can easily fail. Phased modular migration. Data and features are migrated in stages. Complex systems with many interdependencies. Safer and easier to debug. Parallel, dual writing. Both old and new systems run in parallel. Writes are mirrored. Eventually, legacy is strangled off. High availability systems or microservice transitions. So it seemed they were very likely doing 3. Because the strangler pattern, or it's kind of a modular migration, and eventually you just strangle that off. I'm not sure. I think you can't, again, have legacy items in your database. It's going to lead to things like this. So let's go back to the AOL article. 72,000 images over the last 2 years. Supposedly all these images were before February 2024. 13,000 selfies or photo ID cards, and another 59,000 images stored in the database where of individuals posted to the app. And that's one of the more sinister things. And there's a reason this app was targeted, and I'm not going to get into that, but so, quote, T, founded by Sean Cook, was designed as a woman-only app for users to document their negative experiences with men and warn other women of potential danger, unquote. Quote, the vulnerability was discovered by users on 4chan who began sharing photo IDs of women on the platform. In a thread detailing the hack, one user wrote, "Yes, if you sent TAP your face and driver's license, they doxed you publicly," unquote. Quote, earlier this week, and due to several viral tweets from its users, T became the #1 app on the Apple App Store. The trending app has since become the subject of online controversy, particularly from individuals who disagree with the app's focus on documenting unwanted and inappropriate behavior of men in a public forum without verification. Many critics, including men who have been implicated on the app, see the app's reporting mechanisms, such as users posting images of, quote, red flag men, unquote, and its user verification system, which uses photos to confirm a user's gender, as violations of privacy, unquote. So that right there is likely why it was targeted. And from there, I mean, it becomes the #1 app in the App Store, and then within 2 or 3 days, it gets one of the largest data breaches I've heard of. And one of the things that makes it so sinister is the mapping aspect and the geotagging and the license, the driver's licenses, and the selfie IDs, and the nature of the application, the fact that it's female only. It's a huge breach of privacy. And all that what I was explaining off of was from AOL.com. So that is a huge deal. I'm interested to see how that proceeds. We will move on to some other forms of cyber. Drones. Oops. Excuse me for doing that. Drones are being used in heavily being used on the southern border. And why, we'll do some article reading and find out now. So from News Nation, CBP expands blimp surveillance to combat drone threat. Quote, cartels use drones to scout agents, smuggle drugs, even drop bombs, unquote. More than 60,000 detected between July and December of last year by the Department of Homeland Security. 328 Mexican drones are coming within 500 meters of the U.S. border every day. Some law enforcement agencies are turning to surveillance blimps, known as aerostats, equipped with radar and high-altitude cameras. Parts of the tethered aerostat radar system, which is a blimp system that seems to run across the southern border. Aerostats are capable of detecting objects up to 200 miles away. These drones are serious, and the fact that they're coming up the border, across the border is scary, and drone defense systems are becoming larger. Let's continue with another article. 328 Mexican drones are coming within 500 meters of the U.S. border every day. $27,000 unique remote controlled craft doing the flying. So across 60,000 drone flights, 27,000 drones across 60,000 drone flights. 400 feet high in US and 120 meters in Mexico. Up at night. Clear view of US Border Patrol agents' location and movement. It's a huge deal. It's a huge deal. This technology is so quote, warring cartel factions have attacked one another using drone-delivered explosives, unquote. I believe this is mostly being used when it's across a border for intel and possibly drugs. Quote, the act allows DHS and Department of Justice agencies to track drones deemed as possible threats to identify, contact, and warn the operator to electronically jam the craft without consent and in extraordinary circumstances use reasonable force to disable the UAS, unquote. And that is in response to Preventing Emerging Threats of Act of 2018, which expires supposedly this September. And that was all from Border Report. And this is from Axon, quote, to combat this evolving aerial threat, border security forces must implement combat-tested counter-UAS technology, real-time detection, tracking, identification, and mitigation. And Axon, Axon is a counter-drone technology system. Let's see what they provide. Let's see. I can't tell what they provide, but that was an interesting article. This is AP News from June 24th. Fleet of armed drones in the southern Mexican state of Chiapas. Police, that's police. Oh, this is about Mexican police are using drones. This is from Ted Cruz in Parriva. July 22nd, Cruz said that drones have become a weapon, a delivery system for terror. Spying, attacking civilians, assassinating leaders, crashing planes, and destroying buildings. Quote, on our southern borders, cartels now operate fleets of drones, smuggling fentanyl, coordinating illegal crossings, and blocking U.S. surveillance. They've formed specialized drone units. They've dropped bombs on, parentheses, Mexican soil. They've deployed signal jammers. Transporting weapons, phones, and drugs into the United States, including federal prisons. Outpacing our law enforcement on every front. Yeah, I mean, drones are real. Drones are real. So I just wanted to bring that up and we will stop speaking about that, and we'll move on to review the Microsoft breach, and probably from there call it a day. The TAP breach was huge. That was really huge. Not because because it happened and the nature of it, absolutely, but also the fact of, was this a legacy database that was public facing? That's, again, you have to go through your cloud and you have to purge it of these things, of legacy items. So I believe so. And if you haven't seen the map, it's pretty surreal. Oh, here it is. Yeah, it's all over. Let me just briefly show it. I'm going to briefly show it. Give me one moment. How do I, well, yeah, I can't show it, but it's pretty much markers all over the United States. All over the United States. Puerto Rico, down from Florida to Seattle and Maine to San Diego, and you got 2 markers in like southeast Alaska, and markers in Alaska too. I mean, the entire United States. It's a big hack. And now, so if you don't know, earlier this week, Microsoft got hacked. Microsoft SharePoint. So a vulnerability, a 0-day vulnerability was discovered. So let's go quote. This is from Cybersecurity Drive. Government authorities and cybersecurity teams around the world are responding to a wave of cyber attacks targeting critical vulnerabilities in Microsoft SharePoint. Began in July, affecting systems at government agencies. And then, if you don't know, vulnerabilities are tracked with abbreviation, these, CVEs. And so they were provided 2 CVEs, or attack chain was discovered by Coadin. Code White GmbH was able to reproduce the attack chain. Quote, the attacks appeared to have escalated because Microsoft released incomplete patches for the initial vulnerabilities, unquote. Compromised Microsoft SharePoint customers worldwide. Department of Energy has confirmed that it was hacked. So what happened was, oops. There was a 0-day vulnerability released by Microsoft. It was exploited. Government was impacted. Department of Energy was hacked, affecting DOE components, including the National Nuclear Security Administration. the agency that manages the nation's nuclear weapons stockpile. DHS, Department of Homeland Security, also confirmed that it was hacked. No evidence that they exfiltrated any data from any of its components. Quote, Microsoft has identified 2 China-backed nation-state actors, Linen Typhoon and Violet Typhoon, participating in the initial attack wave. Began as early as July 7. Linen has been active since 2012, focused on stealing IP, targeted governments, defense contractors, and human rights groups. Violet has been active since 2015, focused mainly on non-governmental organizations, higher ed, media, and finance. Additionally, a third China-based hacker, which tracks as Storm 2603, has been conducting ransomware attacks with the SharePoint flaws. They deployed these 2 malwares, Warlock and Lockbit ransomware, through SharePoint vulnerabilities, intrusions since July 18th, according to Microsoft. Steal machine keys. Well, the incredible thing about Microsoft is like they have this legacy business, this really deep-rooted legacy business that at times works closely with industrial systems. And with industrial systems and hardware systems like that, military systems, that software, that legacy software, I mean, if a nuclear bomb from 1953 still works, I don't know the specifics of the arsenal, but there's legacy software and Microsoft's business. I mean, that business is going to be so alive for so long, just managing its legacy, which is so deep rooted in so much infrastructure. It's going to be interesting. I think one thing that AI is going to do is bring a lot of different operating systems. I think people will be able to go down to that layer much more finely and be able to, I don't know if it's needed. Maybe you can just do it off of Linux or something. I've never really looked into building an operating system, but it just seems that level of granularity will be available. And as people get into robotics, if that level of granularity is available and if it makes sense in an environment, it might happen. So 3 different Chinese state actors attacking through the Microsoft SharePoint vulnerabilities. Researchers at Rapid7 have posted an exploit module on GitHub. Quote, with mass exploitation currently occurring, defenders should take immediate action for any SharePoint servers in their environments, unquote. Being the best offense, the best defense is good offense. I mean, and that's going back to T. The best defense is good offense. You had a legacy database. You have a legacy database. That should be removed as soon as possible. It's go through your cloud, purge the cloud of what you don't need, and verify that everything you do have on there is needed and is secure. I understand there are people, especially if you've heard the story of Tinder too. I mean, it was just on. I've heard the founder of Tinder speak about how it went viral on prototype code. And one thing that may have been less sinister with that is that Tinder was not a woman only app. T was a woman, is a woman only app, and it is a social rating system, and it is a controversial social rating system. So it was targeted for obvious reasons, especially days after it becomes the #1 app in the App Store. And so at this point, the best defense is a good offense. Unfortunately, if everything that you get here on these headlines is true, that this was a legacy database, the data is from February 2024 or earlier, that's when that applies. That data should have been transferred or deleted, and the database should have been deleted itself. All right, so we'll continue with Microsoft. So here is another vulnerability. I won't speak about that one yet. We'll continue with the SharePoint vulnerability. They were patched. Early alert system, yes. So yep, it looks like it was patched. Linen Typhoon, Violet Typhoon. Quote, the tech giant is probing if a leak from the Microsoft Active Protections program led to the widespread exploitation of vulnerabilities in its SharePoint software globally over the past several days, unquote. The efficacy and security of all our partner programs, and makes the necessary improvements as needed. Quote, a researcher with Vietnamese cybersecurity firm Viettel demonstrated the SharePoint vulnerability in May at the Pwn to Own cybersecurity conference in Berlin, unquote. Quote, the researcher Din Ho On Cao was awarded $100,000, and Microsoft issued an initial patch for the vulnerability in July, but members of the MAPP program were notified of the vulnerabilities on June 24th, July 3rd, and July 7th. Microsoft first observed exploits attempts on July 7th. Wow, this is possibly be crazy. Quote, the likeliest scenario is that someone in the MAPP program used that information to create the exploits, unquote. Wow. Quote, it would not be the first time that a leak from the MAPP program led to a security breach. More than a decade ago, Microsoft accused a Chinese firm of breaching its non-disclosure agreement and expelled it from the program. NDAs. Yeah, that's huge. And then this is a second vulnerability in Copilot. Copilot is GitHub or Microsoft. It's Microsoft Copilot. Microsoft also owns GitHub, and I believe they actually probably just use Microsoft Copilot. I don't use Copilot. Critical vulnerability in Microsoft Copilot Enterprise. Gain root access to its backend container. Significant risk. Malicious users to manipulate system settings. Originated from an April 2025 issue. Introduced a live Python sandbox powered by Jupyter Notebook. Wow. That's very scary. Well, this is a pretty extensive hack. So let's see. Let's try and keep up with it. Copilot to coaxing an unpredictable child. Using Jupyter's % command syntax, they executed arbitrary Linux commands as the Ubuntu user within a mini Conda environment. Despite the user being in the pseudo group, no pseudo binary existed, adding an ironic layer to the setup. Misaligned models or configurations on the model. This gets very deep into the code. I guess I can speak on it. Revealed the sandbox core role in running Jupyter notebooks alongside a Tika server. Limited link local network interface with a 32 net mask, utilizing an overlay FS file system linked to a quote to a path legion path on the host. Custom scripts in the app directory. Copilot could be convinced to download files or tar folders, copying them to mint data for external access via blob links on outlook.office.com. Wow. A key binary Go client app in app acted as the container's interface, running a web server on port 6000 for post requests to execute endpoints. Simple JSON payloads like code N triggered code execution in the Jupyter environment. An HTTP proxy binary hinted at future outbound traffic capabilities. Quote, a critical oversight in line 28 involved a pgrep command without a full path, executed in a while true loop every 2 seconds. This relied on the path variable, which included writable directories where the legitimate pgrep resides. Root access. Yeah. Wow. Root access, enabling file system exploration. Yeah, it's that's a pretty in-depth explanation of that issue. It's good to understand it, try to understand it. Well, thank you everyone for joining. So we spoke about T, we spoke about the nature of likely why it was targeted and how it was targeted, and how cleaning up legacy items is important to do. We spoke about drones flying over the southern border. We spoke about Microsoft and their vulnerability, and we also spoke about how it's a legacy enterprise software provider, and because it does connect with a lot of industrial systems, it's got a huge, it's really interesting, that company, Microsoft, and its role to play in the next 20 to 30 years. Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend. Happy Friday evening for some of you, and happy